Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum everyone. The topic that we'll be discussing today is the power of positive thinking. We all speak about positive thinking. We all want positive thinking in our lives. And it's a great question as to how we can develop this positivity and why at all is this positive thinking so essential to all of our lives. So we'll be discussing this important subject today. Before that, I'll briefly discuss a verse from the Quran. This is a verse in chapter Al-Baqarah. It states, "We take on God's own die. Who has a better die than God's?" This verse is also translated as, "We take on God's color." In Arabic, it is called Sibghatullah. So what is this Sibghatullah? The color of Allah, the dye of Allah, taking on God's own dye. It means that a believer is a person who leads his life in this world in such a way that in everything that he does, his God-oriented personality is reflected. So his speech, his conduct, even his thinking is dependent on his belief in God. It is inspired from his belief in God. So the life of a believer is not based on his selfish desires, his own way of thinking, his self-styled principles. Rather, the life of a believer, everything that a believer does, shows and gives an illustration of very high divine principles. And this is what distinguishes a believer from anybody else. What distinguishes a believer from another person is not his external appearance, his clothes, his way of dressing up, the food that he eats, or the way he walks, etc. These external factors are not what really define a believer. What defines a believer is actually his character, his inner personality, his way of thinking, and how he deals with people. And this is all determined by God-given principles. And this is the meaning of Sibghatullah, or taking on God's dye, or taking on God's color. So the entire personality of a believer is painted in the dye of God. So this is the meaning of this verse. And now we'll move on to the topic which we have to discuss today. It is the power of positive thinking. Now we will begin with an example from the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Because it has been stated that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the most successful man in history at both religious and secular levels. And this is a statement by Dr. Michael Hart, who's an American author. So the question is, what was the basis of this tremendous success that the Prophet Muhammad was able to achieve? And this can actually be answered by a simple two-letter word, and that is his positive thinking, his positive attitude, and positive approach to life. And another Orientalist, a British Orientalist, E. Klett, has said that the Prophet faced adversity, he faced difficulty with the determination to wring success out of failure. That means he had the determination to convert his failure into success. So, what gave the Prophet this magnificent ability, this exceptional ability of converting his failures into success? And that was positive thinking. He converted his disadvantage into his advantage. Even in the midst of very unpleasant, very unfavorable conditions, he was able to achieve his goal. So we will try to discuss how the Prophet was able to achieve this. Because we have to understand that in life, in this world, we will not always get happy situations. We will not always get situations which are pleasant and in accordance with our way of thinking. If we want that kind of life, then we should know that we are living in a fool's paradise, because that kind of life is not available to anyone, and it will not be available to anyone in this world. Here we will face a lot of difficulties, a lot of untoward and unwanted situations which we dislike, which are against our desires. And the reason is that in this world, every person has his own interest, his own goal, his own purpose, his own aim in life. And he is busy trying to achieve that aim, busy trying to fulfill that goal. And in the process of fulfilling his interest, he may do something which is negative for us, which has a negative effect on us, which is harmful for us. So we have to find out a method, we have to find out a strategy that in spite of all these negativities surrounding us, we should be able to achieve our goal. In spite of all the negative things around us, we should be able to look at matters positively. We should not allow that negativity become a part of us. We should be able to think positively, because positivity inspires action. Positivity makes us effective in whatever we are doing in life. If we are not positive, we won't be able to achieve anything in the best capacity that we have. So positivity increases or raises our intelligence level. It raises our ability to work in a focused way. So we have to understand this principle, and there is an excellent example from the Prophet's life how he converted a negative situation into a positive one. How he looked at a seemingly disadvantageous situation as an advantage. So the Prophet, as you all know, began his mission in Makkah in the year 610 AD. And at that time, the Makkan city was ruled by the Quraysh. They were the political leaders of Makkah. And they realized that if they accepted the Prophet's message, if they accepted the message of the Quran, if they accepted this book, this message contained in this book, then their political interest would be hurt. Their political leadership would become questionable. So for their political interest, to serve their political interest, they began to oppose the Prophet with all their might, with all possible capacity, with everything that they had. They created a lot of difficulty for the Prophet. And one of the things that they did was, whenever somebody from outside of Makkah came to Makkah, they would immediately start telling him to not go to the Prophet. They would say that he is a person who has divided our people. He has come up with a new religion. He is a heretic. He is an apostate. So don't go to him. So they spread a lot of negativity about the Prophet. They did everything to defame him. And this was a very disadvantageous situation if you look at it. Today, if somebody defames us, somebody speaks against us, it makes us so angry, it makes us so troubled. But at that point, the Quran gave an excellent kind of line of thinking to the Prophet. The Quran said to the Prophet, see those people who are accusing you and who are hurling allegations at you as doing something very positive. And that positive thing is that they are making you famous. They are actually telling everybody who's coming from outside of Makkah about you, about your message. They are making you very, very famous. They are giving you high renown, as the Quran itself says, Rafana laka zikrak. So they are giving you a high renown by mentioning you to everybody who comes to them. So in a way, they are carrying forward your message. So we see that the Prophet saw a disadvantageous situation as an advantage. People were speaking badly about him, but he saw that as an opportunity, as something which helped to propagate his message forward. And many people actually became very curious about the Prophet when they heard about all the things that were being said about him. And they came to the Prophet asking, what is your message? And many even accepted him as a prophet. They were moved by the message of the Quran. So we realize that the way the Prophet was able to find success was his ability to look at even a negative situation positively, to convert a disadvantage into an advantage, to convert a failure into a success. And this is what the Quran had told the Prophet. Develop the ability to see yusr in usr, see ease in hardship, see opportunity in problem. And this was the most primary reason why the Prophet was able to successfully carry out his mission during his life and achieve the goals that he had to. So this was the message I had to give today. Now I can take a few questions. The first question is from Mr. Zubair Shah. What should I do to maintain my positivity level? What should I do to maintain my positivity level? This is a good question, and we all often talk about how we should maintain our positivity. How should we keep our levels of positivity up all the time? Because as I said, in life we won't only get very good situations to live in. We will get bad situations which are against our desires. People are doing things against us. So how to maintain our peace of mind, how to be positive even in the midst of all this, which is happening contrary to our way of thinking. So the first thing that we all have to do is we have to identify our negative thoughts, our negative ideas and negative emotions. We all have some or the other negative thought. If you pause and think about this right now, there must be something which you thought today which made you negative, which made you angry, which made you sad. So regularly we have negative thoughts bombarding our mind. So identify that negative thought. That is the first principle, the first step that we all have to take. The second step that we have to take is to give that negative thought a positive interpretation. Convert that negativity into positivity. So for example, some days back, I was speaking to a person who spoke very negatively about his boss at workplace. He said that his boss was burdening him with work. He was giving him a lot of work and he was very troubled and irritated. And throughout the day he would remain frustrated because his boss would keep giving him some or the other work. So this frustration had made him extremely negative. But then this same person was not understanding another aspect of the matter. He wasn't looking at another very important element in the whole situation. And that was to not look at all the work that was given to him as a burden, but to look at all the work which was being given to him as something which was increasing his efficiency, increasing his effectiveness. So, for example, earlier he was doing a certain amount of work in a given period of time. And now he's doing a greater amount of work in the same period of time. So that is increasing his mental efficiency. And that's a positive way of looking at the whole situation. Because increasing your mental strength is the best thing that you can give to your mind. Because the principle with the mind, with our mind, is use it or lose it. If you don't use your mind properly, then slowly when you age, you will see that your mind will keep losing its functions, its ability to analyze, to reason, your memory, everything will become slowly retarded. So the more you use your mind, the more you push it to the limit, the more your mind will function and the more it would remain alive even towards the end of your life. So this is something which we all have to do. We all have to, for our own benefit, we have to convert our negativity into positivity. Because you will have experienced that your negativity kills you. You are negative for a person. You have hatred for a person. You have complaints against a person. But what is it doing to you? It is only harming you. It is only making your mind tensed and stressed. So why not save yourself? Why not save the peace of your mind? Always remember, and this is something which Maulana Wahiduddin Khan has taught me. He has written in his books extensively that always remember that you are more important than the problem. If there is a problem outside of you, remember that don't let that problem become a master of you. No problem is greater than you. No problem is so great that it should take away your peace of mind. Your peace of mind is most precious, more precious than anything else in the world. So don't let any problem, any person take away your peace of mind. That's your greatest asset and try to preserve it in every situation. This is a question from Mr. Sayyid Sultan. What can we say to a person who is facing repeated failures? How should he remain motivated? And there's a similar question from Mr. Waqas Abbasi. How to cope up with depression which has happened to me? It never fades away. So often it happens that we become depressed. We become depressed when we face failure. We want to achieve something. We want to fulfill a goal, a choices, dream or aspiration. But we see that it doesn't get fulfilled. We suffer failure. We meet failure. We meet roadblocks and obstacles. So what do we do to remain motivated and not slide into depression, slide into a phase of dejection and feeling that we are losers, I'm a loser, I can't do anything? We have to understand that every failure actually comes to teach you something. It comes to give you a lesson. No failure is meant to be an end in itself. This is a very important principle of this life which we have to understand. No situation is permanent and no situation is actually an end. Through every situation, God Almighty is trying to teach us a lesson. And we have an example in a scientist. He was one of America's greatest inventors. And his name was Thomas Alva Edison. You all must have heard of his name. Because he is credited for having invented the light bulb. The light bulb which we still use today, goes back to the work done by Thomas Alva Edison way back in the 19th century. So what did Edison do? How was he able to invent something so novel? Now we all know that the electric light bulb has a filament inside it, and that filament, when it is heated, when it is given electric current, it heats up and it glows, it gives out light. That's the principle working behind the electric light bulb. Now the filament, the element that glows inside the light bulb, is the main component of the light bulb. Now Edison could not understand which material, which metal should he use as a filament for a light bulb. And he tried several elements, several raw materials, several metals. And one after the other he faced failures. He kept on facing failures. And finally, after several attempts, numerous attempts, he was able to discover that particular filament which glows for a long time when it is heated on being given electric current. So Edison said something very important about this discovery of the light bulb. He said that I have not failed 10,000 times. I will not say that those 10,000 times when I did something and it did not work was a failure. So those 10,000 attempts were not 10,000 failures. He said that these 10,000 attempts of mine actually showed that this is not the way to work. There is some other way out. There is some other way to work. So he did not look at his failure as a failure. He said I actually proved, I actually established that this is not the way to work. And somebody else will learn from this, will learn from the fact that I establish that this is not the way to work. So he looked at his failure not as something bad. He looked at his failure as a stepping stone towards something else. So he said that his failure was not failure. His failure was a way to see, to understand that there is another way to work. So when you face some such situation in life, when your goals are not being fulfilled, when your aspirations are not being achieved, then you should realize that you need to replan your work. You need to do something which is meant to make your work or make your planning more foolproof. Try to find out a way which is better. So your failure actually comes to teach you a lesson. It comes to tell you that the method that you are following, the principle that you're following is not right. Try out another method. Try out another alternative. So learn from everything that comes your way. Every situation, every adversity helps you learn, teaches you something. Grow with it. Grow your experience through it. This is a question from Mr. Amir Ahmad. When a person faces accident in life, his motivation level goes down. What must he do to remain positive? What should a person do when he faces accident in life? Now we must understand that every situation that we face in life is meant to grow us in our spirituality. Even if we achieve something in life, even if we have a pleasant and a happy experience, we should realize that it has not come to make us happy and elated and joyful. It has come to make us discover or extract something spiritual from it, something that makes us grow closer to Allah, to our Creator, something which helps us establish a close bond with our Creator. So same is accident. An accident gives you a shock. It's a very shocking situation. And that should be used as a moment to turn to Allah, to understand how you can develop your relationship with God. So for example, recently I was listening to a talk of a young girl. She was my age, and she was speaking about herself. She said that she suffered an accident when she was in her college days. And that accident, you won't believe, left her paralyzed, left 2/3 of her body paralyzed. Only 1/3 of her body was functioning. She was a Pakistani girl, and even today, after the accident, it has been several years and months, she has recuperated, she has recovered, and she has started her studies again. She has become a doctor and is pursuing her MD from a foreign university. So she said something very important, two very important points. The first point she made was that before her accident, she was leading a life of ignorance. She had a lot of blessings that she had received from God, but she never looked at them as blessings. Only when a very important part of her body stopped functioning after the accident, she realized how important it was, how utterly necessary it was for her to function, and how much she was indebted to the Creator, but she never thanked Him. So she said, I realized the importance of thanking Allah for every blessing that I have right now. Earlier, I never thanked Him for anything. So it inculcated a lot of thankfulness in her. Secondly, she said a point which was very important for all of us. She said that after her accident, she was left with a disability. She was not able to work in the way she worked earlier. She was paralyzed. Her hands can barely move, and of course, she cannot walk at all. So she said that I have now, after several months, have learned how to manage my life with this disability. I have learned how to do everything that I used to do earlier, and I am now trained in this kind of life. So she said that after she faced an accident, she was obviously shocked, but that experience forced her to adapt to that life. And she said that the experiences have taught her so much, have trained her so much, that now she doesn't want to exchange her life with anybody else's life. And she doesn't even want to go back to her previous life, because it had made her grow in maturity and wisdom, and how to live life along with adversity, along with difficulty. So we have to see that when we are struck with a problem, when we are struck with a difficulty, it comes to develop in us an ability which was not present in us. And that ability is to find a way out, to lead your life, achieve your goal in spite of that difficulty, in spite of the presence of that unhappy situation, that unpleasant situation. So your difficulty is actually coming to train you in an art which you did not know, which you were unaware of. So this is how we have to see accidents, shocks, and the various problems that we face in life. They come to actually make our mind more active, make our mind learn something, so that with that difficulty we can carry on our life. This is a question from Mr. Sheikh Latif. How to stop overthinking and anxiety? The way to stop overthinking is that often we overthink about the future. We are very, very concerned about what would happen in the future. We keep thinking of various possibilities, and that is called overthinking. So overthinking is something which we have to control. We have to understand what we can do, and we should do that. But there's another aspect of overthinking, which you have yourself called as anxiety. And we must know that anxiety is not something which is bad. Because what is anxiety? Anxiety comes when you have a feeling of unpredictability about the future. You don't know what would happen in the future. So that keeps you worried. It keeps you on your toes. It keeps you alert. So if there was no such anxiety, if you were sure about what is to come in the future, then your mind would become very stagnant. It would become non-functional because you would know what is to come. You know, you have predicted the future. So nothing troubles your mind and your mind is in a sleeping state. So anxiety about the future is actually good because it gives you an element of uncertainty about life, and that keeps your mind functional. That keeps your mind trying to find out ways of what to do if you're faced with a situation which you think you won't be able to handle. So uncertainty and anxiety actually are good for us because they keep our mind alive and energetic. This question is from Mr. Soleh Ibrahim. Does it mean that negative effects would always be there to hinder you to achieve a goal? How to prepare ourselves mentally or overcome the negativity surrounding around you always, and why we see or focus on negative effects only? True, we do have a tendency to look at the negative because looking at the negative does not really does not require effort on the part of your mind. The negative is something which is very apparent. It is right before you. But to convert it into positive requires some kind of mental effort. It requires a kind of hard work of the mind. It requires mental labor. So this is why we are more prone to seeing things negatively than seeing things positively. So to be able to convert the negativity around you into positivity, you have to really train your mind. And we must understand an important way that the mind works. Neuroscience tells us, the science of our mind tells us that if you give your mind a certain suggestion, a negative suggestion for example, then your mind will keep working on it. It will keep developing it. It will keep strengthening that negative suggestion. So if you have to make your mind positive, give it consciously a positive suggestion. If you fail, for example, and you tell your mind, I'm a failure, then your mind will keep working on it. Even if you're sleeping, remember your mind is not asleep. Your ideas in your mind are still developing, they're generating. The connections in your nerves, in your neurons or nerve cells are still active, still going on. So once you give yourself a suggestion that you're a failure, you're a loser, your mind keeps working on it, it keeps strengthening it, and you'll all the more then look at yourself as a failure. But if you give your mind a positive suggestion, a positive feedback that no, this failure does not mean that I am a failure. This failure means that I am a person who has taken a wrong step right now, but I have the opportunity, I have the possibility to take the right step. I can replan, I can revise, I can find out new ways to achieve my goal. I have so many alternatives. I have so many possibilities. The door to possibilities, the scope of possibilities has not come to an end. So this is how you have to train your mind. Positivity comes with training of the mind. It doesn't come automatically to you. Negativity comes automatically, but positivity requires effort on your part. So make that effort to be able to be positive. This question is from Mr. Amir Modi. Is there any difference between positive thinking and rational thinking? I would say that positive thinking comes from rational thinking. If you reason out things, if you reason out matters, it would lead you to positive thinking. For example, if suppose you apply for a job and you don't get that job, then one scenario is to blame the employer for bias, blame the company that you applied to, the organization for discrimination and prejudice. But the other scenario, the other side, the other way of looking at this matter is to understand that there's a lot of competition in the world, and a lot of people would therefore compete for the same post that I applied to. And somebody who got it was more competent than I was. So I should actually find out where I was lacking. I should discover my shortcoming and try to make myself more competent, so that when I approach an organization, they can look at my skill sets and actually recruit me. So we have to understand that this positive thinking comes through rational thinking. If you reason out the whole thing in your mind, you'll be able to arrive at positivity. As I said, positivity does not come to you automatically. You have to train your mind to reason it out. Train your mind to convert negativity into positivity. And this is an exercise of the rational mind. This is an exercise of your reason. So clearly, positive thinking and rational thinking are linked. This is a question from Mr. Mohammad Asif. Can you help me to get rid of anger? How to clear my mind of bad thoughts and how to forgive people? The way to rid yourself of anger is to understand that by venting out your anger at someone or expressing your anger in an outburst will be of no benefit to you. So the moment when you're angry, as the Prophet, peace be upon him, has said, if you're standing, sit down. If you're sitting, then lie down. It means that when you're angry, you should take a pause. You should not immediately react or retaliate to the situation. Pause and allow that anger to subside, and then think of what decision you should take. What should be the best way of action? So this is the only thing that you have to do. The moment you get angry, you should take a pause. And you must understand that if you don't do that, then you will react immediately. You will explode. You will be enraged. And that would not help you ever in anything. Any decision taken in anger is not a positive decision. It is a decision which only leads you to regret and remorse. So take a decision which has positive results, beneficial results for you. Don't take a decision which makes you regret later. So this was the last question for today, and I'll take up the other questions later on.